and welcome back to another episode of CUNY Uncut, where we talk about anything and everything, uncensored, unedited, and uncut. And as we get to the chillier time of year in the fall, I have to remind you of your civic duty to go out and vote. Here with us today to guide us through Election Day and guiding us towards a better and more progressive future in New York City is a political economics major at the Macaulay Honors College at Hunter College with backgrounds in data analysis and policy. Without further ado, I would like to give a warm welcome to Alexander Shearman. How are you doing today?
Doing good.
Well, thank you for coming in. I appreciate you taking the time, and I think it's really important, especially around this time of year, to really encourage CUNY students specifically to really go out and make sure their voices are heard.
Yeah, no, I think that was my whole synopsis of it. Very much, getting out there, trying to be more civically engaged, trying to really have a voice in our political system.
Yeah. It's incredibly important, but I wanted to kind of start off with you. So you're a sophomore right now, which I think you might be the youngest ever guest on this show, which I want to congratulate you for. You are the youngest person ever. But your journey didn't start at Hunter College. You actually transferred from the College of Staten Island. Can you talk about that process for you?
Yeah, so I came from a few different, so my school was in Brooklyn College, so I would start from there. And I would say that was when I started like a lot of civic understanding. I was able to take a lot of urban study classes early on. Professors talked about understanding the background of New York City politics. And then I went to Staten Island, and so that was my freshman year. A very, very different experience than Brooklyn College. And so I think that's where my understanding of political alignment and the neighborhoods and the cultural understandings. Staten Island is a very Italian Catholic. So their civic duty, though, is very much, they're very civically engaged, I would say. And so I saw that on campus. But the civically engaged wasn't something I was similar to on my background, more on the progressive alignment, more so conservative in the Staten Island. I didn't really find myself tuning well, but it was really well to hear different voices and see why people think different political alignments.
Yeah, it's very good to see both sides of the spectrum as well and really hear what everybody has to say. But I wanted to ask about why Hunter College was the choice for you instead of maybe going back to Brooklyn.
Yeah, so I wanted to also take some more urban studies classes. I think based on my experience in Staten Island, understanding how you have basically a political dividing line from North to South Shore. That's a lot to do with urban studies and urban understandings. So I really have a love for cities and understanding why cities are the way they are and why they work the way they do.
And so Hunter College did it have a program that you were interested in?
Yeah, they have the Urban Studies program, and then also they have the Roosevelt House. So I'm taking a class there in public policy this semester, and just really trying to get into the nitty-gritty of like understanding policy, especially from some well-acclaimed professors.
You mentioned the Roosevelt House and that program. A lot of people don't really know about it. Can you further explain what goes on there?
Yeah, so Roosevelt House is like the public policy offshoot in Hunter College. So they host most of the public policy classes. Maybe a few or two public health classes in conjuncture. And so they really try to emphasize a Rooseveltian viewpoint of society and understanding how public policy works and what are the governmental players within our society.
So is it mostly are there classes there? Is it on the Hunter main campus or is it somewhere else?
Yeah, no, it's not on the campus, but it's I would say 4 blocks away, very close and very easy to get to if you don't want to be outside, maybe at Brookdale. It's not over there.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, yeah. And why is it called the Roosevelt House? Is it just named after a president?
Yeah, it was the house in FDR. I think he signed the Medicare. He signed the Medicare bill into enactment, and that's when he was thinking up his ideas of what does our world look like after the Great Depression? And so the house was the house he lived in. And Eleanor Roosevelt, I think, donated it to Hunter back when Hunter, they were transitioning to both gender schools. But yeah, so they had donated to Hunter and yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's a very historic building with so much going on in there. And I guess it does fit that the public policy is going on there. What types of other things are you involved with in the Roosevelt House?
I guess the other thing would be the Roosevelt Institute. Not directly a part of the Roosevelt House, but on the similar alignment. So the Roosevelt House and the Roosevelt at Hyde Park are both of Hyde Park is the other estate Roosevelt had. He had both this and the New York City estate building, and then further down the line in I think 1998. The Roosevelt Institute was founded on Rooseveltian ideas. It wasn't started by anyone in the Roosevelt family, but it was started by a group of college students about how can we emulate Rooseveltian ideas from inspired by the Hyde Park and then also by the Roosevelt House.
Interesting. And what do they have you doing with the Roosevelt Institute?
Yeah, so I started I was looking around for more public policy progressive orgs. And so the Roosevelt Institute was the biggest one I've seen that, very much had that Rooseveltian idea. And so I wrote a paper or blog, and looking forward to writing a policy paper as I continue on that Rooseveltian experience. I was also in DC this past summer, working for them, doing public policy analysis.
Interesting. DC is I mean, the best place to be if that's what you're looking
Yeah.
to do. Can you tell me about the experiences you had this summer?
Yeah, so very good experiences, especially in this time. I would say it was really interesting. I guess the biggest moment politically was like the big beautiful bill passing, and a lot of our work had to do with that. So Roosevelt is a think tank. And so we were talking about, so as a think tank, you're thinking about how you're like a background political player talking to politicians about different ideological viewpoints. So Roosevelt aligns to a progressive viewpoint. When I was in DC, got to learn about what this means. So on the political alignment sphere, you have most extreme conservative to like libertarian and progressives, a lot of political jargon, but it really just breaks down into how politically conservative you are, basically. Are you on the most extreme side of progressive or are you on the most extreme side of conservative? And so a lot of the work we were doing was really carrying this progressive ideal out into the world. I can't particularly talk about as a voice of Roosevelt, but I can say that a lot of the Rooseveltian ideas was about very much hands-on government and also a lot of civic duty and civic action. So for me as an intern, just reading a lot of briefs, understanding what are the things that Roosevelt's trying to put out, doing some editing, doing some data work, and Excel work, of course, as an intern. But yeah, that's like a long spiel of it, but a lot of policy understanding in DC. And also I was given the freedom to explore other progressive communities and understanding what are the different political alignments in DC.
Gotcha. Well, what was the day-to-day like? Who were you learning all this information from?
Yeah, so I was learning from the managing director at the think tank, Hannah, very nice. And so just she gave me a lot of her viewpoints. She was very much invested into the policy world. Has a long tenured career, a lot of PhDs at the think tank, a lot of people to learn from. People in data science, economics, different types of economics I didn't think existed, like stratification economics.
What is that?
Yeah, it's like the stratification of like how economics can propel different civic or economic groups,
Okay.
which is kind of interesting. But yeah, so learning from Hannah, and then also we had very much a hands-on CEO who came and spoke to us a few times, Elizabeth Wilkins, and she was also in this movement. Her parents came from were a part of the NAACP. She was a part of they were a part of like a lot of Black Lives Matters movements, and so that was one person that was also a teacher, and then also I was learning from another person, a few.
Were you one of the few CUNY people was there a lot of CUNY people? What was the demographic like?
Yeah, so that is the one thing. I was the only CUNY student. It's gonna be very heavily scooted to like UMich, because they have the Ford School. There was 2 or 3 from UNC, a few from maybe like University of Florida, and then so more on that skewment.
But it's very inspiring that you were able to be in that position in the first place.
Yeah.
Being the only CUNY student, it
Yeah.
really proves that CUNY can still be in these conversations, be in the room where it happens in order to make change, especially in DC and not just in our own city. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so I think that what most people don't understand is that CUNY had a long history of political involvement. You think back to like CCNY is like the campus in which that really happened during the Vietnam War, the protests. These schools, CUNY, very much politically active. I just think, as times changed and other stuff occurred, I think CUNY has changed in that understanding where a lot of first gen students don't view themselves as political players or don't view themselves as civically engaged. And for me, being in DC, I had to learn that being politically or civically involved is my duty as a citizen of America. And especially when that duty or me being a part of this community is under attack by another political players out there. But yeah, so I think for me being in DC, understanding that CUNY can be out there. I represent a very big diaspora in New York City. So yeah.
And I mean, I have to commend you for it. That's really it's brave for you to be able to do that and be in those same conversations as well. How do you encourage other CUNY students to do similar or the same things to really try and be out there and be in policy?
Yeah, so right now I'm doing a program called Get Free. I wanted to be more on the grounds. Roosevelt is a very much back player of civically, but still important. And so Get Free is an organizing group led civically by youth. And so we've hosted strategy sessions. I hosted different events. We tried to do different things to try to get more youth, especially from CUNY, and reaching out to a lot of different orgs on campus. So I definitely have been trying.
Yeah, well, tell me a little bit more about this Get Free program and kind of what it was based on and what you guys are really trying to accomplish with it.
Yeah, so started in 2020. Basically, the idea is how can youth, on the progressive alignment, try to advocate for themselves. You have Turning Point USA, who was led by someone very conservatively, very much still on that youth agenda, but on that conservative lens. And so for us, it was like, there is no progressive org like that. And so Get Free, and its name is Get Free, from, different racial, different political or economical struggles we deal with for low income, first gen, and other diaspora communities in America. So what it started in New York City, so we have different chapters across America. The New York City chapter is based around the racial. We were able to get a racial commission by the New York State government from Katie Hochul, basically allowing us to talk about racism and talk about racial impacts more. And so from there, Get Free has expanded in this New York City base where we have like around 100, 200 people who come to different of our actions. We talk about how can you become more civically engaged, be more invested in your community, and show actually that you are a political changer. So you think about like Zoran, what a lot of our programs do. A lot of people in our own program are on the Zoran mayoral campaign doing a lot of these fights. And we also teach students how can you become a politically invested person and actually what are the tools and skills that you can use.
It's incredibly hard, especially in New York City, to kind of break through those systems that have been set in place for decades at a time. Why do you think that it's so important to market all of this towards Gen Z and a younger generation?
Yeah, I mean, people don't think that they have power, but definitely from this past election, we understand that Gen Z holds so much power. It definitely changed the political atmosphere as Gen Z was allowed to vote more. And so I think, it is important that you'd get out there because our voices matter. Definitely in this changing world. And I think for me is also understanding that Gen Z is skewing more conservatively right now. And I wanted to see more of that skew to that middle or to center left, understanding that we have come from disparate impacts of like the financial recession and why we want to change all of the political and economical situations in America.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very important that obviously Gen Z gets involved. But how has the marketing towards Gen Z succeeded and failed in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the argument that everyone's having. Why is Gen Z the way it is? I guess if I knew the answer 100%, then it would make me so rich. But it's okay.
Yeah, our parents would say it's because of them damn phones,
Yeah,
but
because of the phones. But no, I think that Gen Z, opposed to like millennials, were raised from the 2008 recession, and so they have a very different viewpoint. It's about very more conservative leaning. I think also the rise of like trad wives is an important understanding
yeah.
of like what Gen Z is trying to emulate. You think about, we came from a 2008 recession, we came from 2020, and so conservative action, conservative viewpoints can seem something that can be more stable. We think about progressive action; it has been on the same atmospheres of economical recessions. So, right as we were trying to become more liberal and progressive, you also had economic failures within our system, not by our faults, but more so of a system of inequality. And so, Gen Z, by our political players on the left, have been told that it's more of the progressive action, less than the economical action. And so, when you have political players on the right talking about, hey, we need to focus on economics, stop talking about the progressive stuff, that doesn't matter. It's about only family values, kitchen table issues. And so it's all about how can they on the right be more economically stable. And yes, I can see how Gen Z being raised in 2020 and also going to the 2008 recession very much views it in a different light to being more conservative. And so, but I would say on that contrary, there are a lot of people in Gen Z that have been pushing for different advocacy. It's just that you do have a large section of that is on the right.
Yeah, I mean it's very split, but I mean a lot of the work that it seems like you've been doing is talking to people and trying to get a sense of where they're at, and that's a very selfless thing to do, especially when a lot of people don't feel heard nowadays. But I really just want to understand why you do all of this.
Yeah, I don't really know why I do all of this. I wouldn't say I think it's just seeing something wrong in the world and wanting to see a change. I don't think I think it's very hard for me to say that, hey, I want to see the world change immediately. I'm not a very immediate person. I understand there has to be coalition building, there has to be different investments made. And I think one of the first things that, really pushed me more so this year was I went to Minnesota in February. And so I was able to see how people from Minnesota, it's not a state that most people go to, think very differently. So they don't have the Democratic Party. They have something called the DFL, Democratic Farmer Labor Party. And so all about farming and, industry. And so very different alignment, and their viewpoints are different. Minnesota is a very Catholic country, state, Catholic and Muslim, and so their political leaning you would think is more conservative, but in the past few elections they have been more on the Dem side, and that's just because they're talking about progressive, breaking down economical inequalities, less so than talking about the progressive viewpoints of social progression, which is still possible with the economical stuff. And so going into that, I've seen that talking to a lot of people who are farmers, who are the everyday citizens, are the people that you want to be talking to, and not so much the political players in the system. And so I think for me, just being the voice, and also just talking to them about like, what are the different things in the way you think? Why do some people think more conservatively? And so I think those were different understandings I've been able to come to, seeing just why is someone rooted in this? Why have someone? I think a lot of it has to do more so where they raised. So think about like Long Island. Long Island is pretty Republican, and why is that? People are more middle class, and so they tend to drive more. And so there's less of this. I guess goes back to that urban studies understanding. Lack of public transportation. You're more enclosed in a one or two communities. You're enclosed to like your church. You're enclosed to your school community. And so they might look exactly the same. They might be also middle class, more conservative thinking, and like conservative thinking can breed together. And so when you have political action players on the right talking about middle class families and middle class values, it can very much seem something that is a good conversation for those people in Long Island, saying, hey, this speaks to me. I want to be on this right political leaning just because they're talking about me more so than talking about progressives in New York City, I guess.
To reach this kind of level of understanding can be difficult. I mean, me personally, I find that politics can be hard to understand because of sometimes the jargon or the way that people are talking or the way that people try and hide behind things. How do you break it down to kind of reach a level of understanding?
Yeah, the way I break down all of this is you got a few people in the back rooms, not really doing much. So just going back to think tanks, that is one of those political jargon words where it's like, what is that? It's just a few professors just talking to each other, really and
Okay.
truly. Uh, and then you think about different other stuff. You think about like DC. It's just a few people talking to each other. If you really break down our societal and our society and our political understandings, it's just a few people talking to each other in a room that they say you can't be in. And so that's how I break it down to everyone. Hey, you can be in this room if you want to be. And you just gotta try and get there because it's not as hard as people think. I think you think of like AOC. She understood that, where it's like she wanted to be in a room that people told her she couldn't be. And she was able to do that just by talking to people on the ground. And so, people don't believe they can be more politically invested. They don't believe that they can be in their civic community. It doesn't mean you're a political player, but it does mean, being out there, being civically aware. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that a lot of political players don't want to make it that aware for us. And so I think joining different programs, if you have the time. I also say some people don't have the time, and I can understand that.
Hmm.
And so I think New York City, we did have a political handbook to see which which people are running for election. Very underfunded, not well.
Yeah.
And so I think New York City has a responsibility to also do that. It's also on that government side. They don't want some people to be able to be out there and be civically engaged. People can be and they will be if they're given the chance. And I think our government has failed at that. And so it's about me being out there with other people, trying to get people more civically engaged because that's how it is.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of politics thinks very big picture, especially in New York. I feel like voters feel like their vote is diluted because they're in New York, it doesn't matter as much, but it really breaks down to the community level at the end of the day. And you're from Brooklyn, you understand.
Yeah.
You've been in your community for a ton of years now. What have you done in your community to not necessarily just like help out with people voting and stuff like that, but what have you done to really inspire others in your own community?
Yeah. So, I guess, you think about like the political or the people that actually are players within local community. It could be the church. It could be the police station. And it sounds crazy, but those are things of, you have religious and you have government. So the police, how are they investing within the community? Are they throwing any events? And so I think for me, just growing up, I would say less so of me actually trying to change that. But I think the police, were in the community, to some people to a negative viewpoint, but to some people to a positive viewpoint. So just growing up in Brooklyn in Flatbush, police very much, I guess, skewing to more black neighborhoods, Afro-Caribbean. And so, the very politically driven narrative pushing that police very much heavily investigating in this community. And so this governmental player, how are people viewing this? People sometimes do, I think goes back to like a longer picture thing of crime, but people view that police being in a neighborhood is necessarily bad. And so I think that political player of police can be a positive in some communities, just showing investment. And then you have like the church, very stable, like a foundation. You have the foundation pieces of a church. And so another player where they can actually, if they want to, it's been done where politicians come and speak at the church. And that is a way to reach the local community that is going to lean a little bit more conservatively on, social issues. But Church Avenue is the most democratic by population, district in America.
Wow.
Yvette Clarke has, her constituents are the most democratic by Black, Caribbean, Christian. That's the biggest population right there. And
Wow.
so it shows that if you're a political player like the church, that it can impact. And so just showing how different in the local community there is that.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful, and it's really important to make sure that everyday people just going about their business make sure that their voices are heard as well, and you're doing a phenomenal job of
Yeah.
that. I want to applaud you for that. But I also want to ask you how more CUNY students can get involved in these sorts of processes.
Yeah, so quick shout out to Roosevelt. Their applications are open right now if you want to join. Very easy to join, just like one application. But also going to different events. I think that most people think it is hard. But if you have the time, go to these events. I host action events, get free. But there are other events. If you also feel like you're not politically in that way, there are events within Hunter as well, which is kind of crazy, at the Roosevelt House. And so, going to these different events, just stepping in an event if you have time. And then also learning more about your politicians, learning more about your local politicians, who's running. I mean, Duran's obviously running, who other people are, Andrew Cuomo's running as well. So, but learning who else is running. You have the district attorneys running, the speaker, and so there's different people that's also running with this election. And who are they? I think you can take the 5 minutes to learn that out. I think you're on your way.
Yeah, learn in your respective boroughs. Learn what opportunities are on your campus as well. There's always going to be some sort of political groups and activists on campus, wherever campus you're on and the entire CUNY system. So I also wanted to ask how voting specifically can really benefit CUNY students.
Yeah, so, I mean, you think about who funds us. Voting is really important. It's not going to be the mayor, it's going to be the governor, but still important. You want to vote politicians who actually care about CUNY. So voting does matter, especially in New York City. Voting for people who care about you, care about your communities. You think about investment within your communities, getting a park built in your community. That goes to the local politicians. If they're politicians that care about you, then they'll advocate for you. So you're thinking about just how much worth is your community to you. I think that's something that plays a lot into it.
I'm just so inspired and in awe of the amount of knowledge that you have about all of these topics, and I really want to say congratulations to you and keep doing what you're doing. But also, what's next for you?
What's next for me? If I knew, I guess just like doing more. I don't know. It's a very like wide thing I'm thinking about. I'm going back to DC in 2 weeks talking about fiscal policy. It's actually pretty exciting, but I don't really know. I think more so just looking out for more events, different programs to be interested into. Hopefully going more into public policy, seeing how I can be more in this world. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but I want to be more politically invested. I want to be more civically engaged. And I want to become a political player, I guess.
Awesome. Well, listen, you're still young. You got so much time ahead of you. You got so much to look forward to. I really thank you, Alexander, for coming on the show today and spreading your wisdom to both me, which I don't know a lot about, and also all the other people in CUNY listening as well.
No problem.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to check out CUNY Uncut on social media and make sure to download the CUNY TV app. And as always, I'm your host, David Horn, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.